international society abandoned Israel again. On March 25, 2024, the United Nations Security Council passed a resolution on the Gaza conflict. This is the first resolution explicitly calling for a ceasefire since the outbreak of the war between Israel and Hamas. The core content of the resolution is 1. Immediate ceasefire. The resolution calls for a ceasefire respected by all parties during Ramadan to resolve the escalating humanitarian crisis in the Gaza Strip. 2. Hostage release. It requires the immediate unconditional release of all hostages held by Hamas and other organizations. 3. Humanitarianism. Emphasizes the urgent need to expand humanitarian aid to civilians throughout the Gaza Strip and strengthen their protection, and remove obstacles to humanitarian aid. It is worth noting that the Muslim Ramadan corresponds to the Gregorian calendar, which is different every year. The date in 2024 is March the 11th to April the 9th. The passage of this resolution is a response to the call of the international community and the Secretary-General, aiming to end the conflict in the Gaza area that has lasted for 171 days, ensure the smooth progress of humanitarian aid, and alleviate the great suffering of Palestinian civilians. However, the resolution was passed, and Ramadan has passed halfway. And for this resolution, the positions of the parties are: 1. Israel, clearly rejected. 2. Hamas, non-committal. So, this resolution is probably another political show. If the United Nations knew the result would be like this, it might not have issued this resolution because both parties reject it. The result greatly reduces the prestige of the United Nations and damages the authority of the United Nations. Indeed, if you only propose slogans and are not responsible for specific measures, then there may be suspicions of paper talk and empty checks. If you really want to do it, the United Nations should send multinational peacekeeping forces to enforce the implementation of the resolution. Whoever resists will be sanctioned in the name of the United Nations. Only in this way can the legal effect of the resolution be explained. Unfortunately, Israel publicly complained. The international community has once again abandoned Israel. Indeed, if the Palestine-Israel division plan continues, then the region will definitely be in constant conflict and never have a peaceful day. Only unification and nation-building is the only way out. The reason is there are many Palestinians in Israel now. These Palestinians have equal citizenship with Israelis. They live and work in peace and have plenty of food and clothing. Why do they want to engage in terrorist activities? Palestinians are not Arabs, but Arabized mixed-race people. Their ancestors are mainly composed of multiple ethnic groups such as Egyptians, Kurds, and Gypsies. So, Palestinians are pan-Arabs. The current Palestinians have been divided into three parts. 1. Israeli citizens, about 2 million people. 2. West Bank of the Jordan River, about 2.7 million people. 3. Gaza Strip, about 2.4 million people. The contradiction between Israel and Palestine has a long history. Everyone has indisputable reasons. The international community's bias towards either party is just fueling the contradictions between the two parties. The contradiction started during the First World War. The Ottoman Turkish Empire allied with Germany and was defeated, so Britain took over the area known as Palestine. This land is home to the pan-Arab majority and the Jewish minority. When Britain established a national home for Jews in Palestine, the land dispute between Jews and pan-Arabs began. Jews say that this is their national origin. Palestinians say that they have owned this land for generations. At the beginning of the 20th century, many Jews, in order to escape the persecution they encountered in Europe, tried to establish their own homeland after the Holocaust, so the number of Jewish immigrants to Palestine continued to increase. Then, more and more violent incidents occurred between Jews and Palestinians. The British trusteeship authorities were helpless and frustrated, so they submitted the solution to the United Nations. In 1947, the United Nations passed a resolution to divide Palestine into two parts, one for Jews and the other for Arabs. The Jews accepted it, but the Arabs rejected it. As a result, the war between Jews and Arabs escalated. In 1948, the British Mandate authorities withdrew entirely from the Palestinian region due to the expiration of their mandate. Simultaneously, Jewish leader David Ben-Gurion declared the establishment of the State of Israel. This action led to the First Arab-Israeli War. The Arab world had long warned that if the Jews established a state, they would strangle it in its cradle. This conflict resulted in hundreds of thousands of Palestinians either fleeing or being forced from their homes. By the time of the ceasefire in the following year, Israel controlled most of the undesignated Palestinian territories. In the subsequent decades, there were more conflicts and wars between Israelis and Palestinians. Today, the issues between Israel and Palestine remain unresolved, and the region remains a bleeding wound in the global village. Unfortunately, the international community's response has been mixed, with more finger-pointing than practical action. This situation reminds us of the interconnectedness with South Africa. At that time, South Africa was ruled by Portuguese descendant whites, and had become a developed country with nuclear weapons. Due to its apartheid policies, South Africa faced widespread international criticism. Eventually, the white authorities yielded, relinquishing power to Nelson Mandela, a black leader. This transition marked the exodus of the white elite. Thus emerged the historical figure of Mandela. 1. He successfully liberated black people. 2. He orchestrated a reverse evolution of South Africa from a developed nation to one with extreme poverty and the highest unemployment rates in the world. Opinions on his legacy vary. If South Africa's current situation is partly the international community's fault, then the same mistake is being repeated with Israel. The ongoing conflict in Israel is a counterterrorism war. If the international community forcefully intervenes, abruptly halting this war, it may inadvertently show compassion for terrorism and persecute the Israeli people. Future terrorist activities could escalate. War inevitably affects civilians. Consider the victims of the atomic bombs in Japan. How many were active-duty military personnel? If anyone claims to wage a war against civilians, let them step forward and fight this counterterrorism war. Terrorism is humanity's common enemy, and tolerating it is a crime. Regarding the treatment of Palestinians, why does Israel build a separation wall in Gaza but not in the West Bank? Because Gaza faces terrorist attacks, while the West Bank does not. Israel is perhaps the only country where citizens carry guns while on vacation. The sight of beautiful Israeli women in bikinis strolling the streets with heavy rifles is a testament to the constant threat of terror attacks. Regarding the recent resolution, Israel claims that the international community has once again abandoned the Jewish people. Put yourself in their shoes. Israel cannot simply stop this counterterrorism war. Hamas must be eradicated. Otherwise, the threat will resurface, leading to countless terrorist attacks worldwide. The UN resolution merely calls for a temporary ceasefire, not a final peace agreement. Even if both sides comply, it won't significantly impact the conflict. Israel will eventually attack Hamas strongholds in Rafah, likely worsening the humanitarian crisis. From a humanitarian perspective, the international community should pressure Egypt to open the Rafah crossing. The UN could establish temporary tent camps in the Sinai Desert to shelter Gaza refugees, men, women, children, and the elderly, until the war ends. Leasing arrangements could govern the campgrounds. Regarding the war, 1. Hamas won't easily release hostages because they make reliable human shields. 2. Israel won't easily abandon the war. It's a rare opportunity to address the terror threat. The ultimate solution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict lies in 1. Promoting the common ancestor of both peoples, Abraham, to foster recognition as brothers. 2. Facilitating the unification of Israel and Palestine. Unified nationhood is already an inevitable trend. Israel's official maps now include the West Bank and Gaza Strip as Palestinian inhabited areas. After unification, Palestinian living standards will match those of Israelis, a dream come true. In 2022, before the war, Israel, $54,594 GDP per capita. Palestine, $3,789 GDP per capita. Imagine the significant improvement in Palestinian quality of life after unification, a true windfall. Terrorism will find no fertile ground there. Just as parents don't abandon any child, the international community won't abandon Israel.